Ho, ho, fucking ho. This is my Christmas message. So, hello, Mark Walsh here, Mr. Embodiment and all that. So the team suggested I do a Christmas message for you. And I said, who am I to do a Christmas message? And they said, well, you've got a beard, you're fat, and you're an alcoholic, at least a recovering one. So I said, yeah, pretty much Santa Claus these days, isn't it? So I thought, why not? So this is a little Christmas message, and I'll do a very short bit at the beginning about embodiment and state of embodiment maybe in the world. And then, if people are interested, a slightly longer kind of rant about the year. As you can see, no notes, no preparation, talking to myself on Zoom. Very, very strange thing. And slightly cold ridden today. I picked up a cold while teaching in Munich and walking around the Christmas markets and being fully licked by all my students who no longer care about COVID, it seems. So yeah, if I sound like I'm trying to have a sexy voice, I am sexy, but this voice is just because I've got some kind of German cold, which seems more efficient than normal cold, and it's actually made me ill for a change. Okay, so Merry Christmas, whatever you're practicing, believing in, whatever. Maybe we can get behind a little bit of joy and peace and generosity and some of those things that I think Christmas is, whatever your religion or lack thereof. I've always been a fan of Christmas. I am soppy, traditional, I don't know what would be the word. I love a bit of Christmas. And when I look at the state of the world, I certainly feel that embodiment is as necessary, if not more necessary than ever. It was the Queen years ago. She does a Christmas message. She said it'd been annus horribilis, which sounds rude, but apparently it's Latin for a bad year. I won't say I've had an entirely bad year, but it's certainly been challenging. And I know for much of the world it has. Obviously, being to Ukraine twice this year has kind of colored my views somewhat. And I think, having a war that could develop into a full world war, nuclear war, is for everyone, though. Whether you have that Ukrainian connection or not, it's kind of a big deal. And my listening in a lot of the world is people finding it harder economically. It depends where you are, who you are, but that fear of not having basic needs met, things like heating and fuel and food costs, these are like basic hierarchy of need stuff after the Chinese plague. That's what it's called, right? After the Chinese plague, which a lot of people had a little social isolation, and there's a cumulative effect to lack of co-regulation, which, remember, we outsource our health, happiness, sanity, really, as social animals, even introverts like the strange cat creature next door. We outsource much of our happiness, sanity, health to other people and social relations. So there is a cumulative impact on that being taken away. There's also co-dysregulation. I think there's a sort of critical mass when enough people are, technical term, fucking mental. When enough people are fucking mental, it just dysregulates everyone. Because instead of meeting people and then getting more regulated, meet people and get more dysregulated. And I've just seen that a lot. Like central Brighton, where I was living for quite a lot of this year, actually moved right into the centre of Brighton. Just the amount of drug addiction and alcoholism. I know the stats, say, from the States really back that up. All-time record highs of the self-medication that is drug addiction and alcoholism. Also, just more subjectively, as well as that data and observations in Brighton, a lot of my students just seem really on the edge. And people with practices like holding on with their fingernails is how it seemed this year, and myself at times included. So it was a pretty humbling year for me in many ways, and there's various reasons for that. I started to suffer some just work burnout from 2 very intense years, really up to the conference. Before the conference, we're looking at maybe 2.5, 3 years of incredibly intense work. And really this year, like, the company's fighting for survival many times. We were doing great courses, like people like our courses, particularly things like CAC, our toolkit, our kind of our flagship stuff, the embodied coaching stuff we do really well. It's just straightforward. We have something that we're really well class at. And there's other courses peripheral to that those courses really people appreciate. They've done really well. But even with that, and having a fairly established reputation in the field, people are just buying less online stuff. I think that's partly the burnout with online. It's partly just people have less disposable income. different in different countries. Like I was just in Germany, where it's a bit less than the UK, for example. But certainly there's some sort of global sense of struggle, both economically and psychologically. And those two things are, of course, combined. They're not separate. Looking at the bigger systemic factors, my personal view on this in terms is the left hasn't done its job for a good number of years now. The job of the left, the healthy left, as I see it around the world, whether you be left or right, I think we could all agree things like holidays are a good thing, things like workers' rights, trade unions have done a lot of good stuff in terms of the National Health Service in the UK, things like that. And that safety net and that balancing of, on the right, we've got the healthy personal responsibility, competition can be a really good thing. Certainly, I've never heard of a communist country I'd enjoy living in terms of economic systems. This is personal stuff, right? But how it relates to embodiment for me is just because of that force in the world of growing real inequality and the left being obsessed with just crazy shit, just stuff that is pretty irrelevant and isn't the main factor in terms of people's well-being. Yes, there are extreme cases. Yes, there are, very small minorities, this and that. But in terms of the main job of the left of keeping things relatively fair, making sure the cost of livings are decent, that people can just get by, I think that has been a massive failure. On top of that, the kind of technology use, technology growth, I think has led to a greater sort of disembodiment. So people are freaked out, dysregulated because of Chinese plague and sort of follow up from that, also the technology use and just the addiction, which I have suffered from at times this year for sure, the addiction to these things, plus this kind of wider kind of economic situation we find ourselves in with the shadow of war. Certainly for many of us up front, for some of us just in the background. There's this sense I've kind of got that maybe the good times are over, and there are people who look at the wider history of the world and see, talk about the Great Peace and different trends, and a lot of this is kind of big, macroeconomic type factors. But what this leads to, I think, is just this feeling of pressure and stress and a shortness in people of patience, of well-being. I had a real well-being crisis myself this year, and it was rough. And even as someone with tools, I'm glad I had the tools, glad I also had the friends and resources. Got some great colleagues. I'd be remiss not to thank everyone at Embodiment Unlimited, which is a much smaller team now, partly because of economic factors, partly just I went, hang on a minute, I don't actually want to run a big tech company. I'd rather be a teacher. And, I've been trying to find that personally, that sweet spot to do what I love, teaching. One of the happiest I've been in months was just a couple of days ago, teaching in Munich, students who want to learn, doing what I'm good at, around nice people. Like Alina was there, who's the CAC manager. Had a great time with Aussie Steve a lot this year. He's been just such a hard-working member of the company. There's people you guys will never meet, like there's a couple of Hungarians who prefer to be private, who work in the company. There's various people in the company. Obviously all the teachers I work with have done a great job. Karen, Christina, Patricia, they're the main three. And it's been awesome to work with all year. Virginia in customer service is just consistently loyal and enthusiastic, kind of one of our biggest fans. Crazy Greek lady, if you've never met her. Wonderful little team of people. I say when the times are tough, you kind of find out who your friends are a little bit, A couple of years ago, we had like loads of money and, suddenly got this big fame, prestige from the conference. And it's all of a sudden everyone's your friend, and now less so, which is a good thing, finding out what's going on there. But I personally had this kind of big resilience crisis that I think represents the microcosm of where a lot of people are at. And I'm very lucky, actually. We've done pretty well in our early certificate embodiment coaching KEC sales at the end of the year. And I got 2 weeks to a little meditation retreat. I'm in a little Airbnb in Portugal, and sort of private solo meditation retreat. Dancing last night. And I've also got the instability of decided to leave Brighton, where I've been living. I've been living there a long while. It's a great little town, but it gets a bit small after a while, a bit gossipy, and had some sort of unpleasant things, and just decided it was time to move on. Gets a bit woke for me, Brighton, and as I said, just being in that urban environment of dysregulated people I went, you know what, I need a calmer environment. So we're looking at the Mediterranean, Portugal. I'm going to be looking at the West Country in the UK as well as a British alternative to Portugal, to find that regulation. Really, really key. And the instability that comes with that, you know, obviously having family who are in Ukraine. Daria's mum was very close to a bombing at one point, you know, got covered in dust. Got friends and family out there now from my trips there, you know, obviously family, but also new friends from working out there. I think that was a real highlight for me this year, was doing that work in Ukraine. And thank you for everyone who supported that. You know, some great support, both practically. It just shows like people pull together in terms of the fundraising, in terms of the logistics. We've got us medicines to deliver to the Children's Hospital. All the people that helped out in so many ways. That just people in these times of crisis, I think, could really pull together in ways that are wonderful. And if it sounds like a sort of bit of a depressing message so far this year, you know, I'd say when things are really tough, people pull together. Blitzscript, they call it in the UK. Another thing that I think is apparent is, how can I put this? The cracks in society are starting to show. You know, I meet a lot of people in Portugal who are building communities, who are looking for another way to live, and in other countries too. You know, Christina, who I work with in Thailand, it's similar there. A lot of people looking for another way of life. You know, there's a reason I think Gabor Mate's book and his Gabor Daniel Mate's book is so popular. That really the thrust of that book, as I understand it, is, you know, normal society is broken. We live in a crazy world. Ooh, I talked to Tad Hargrave, who's a friend of mine, does marketing for hippies, and he's big on community building in Canada and kind of local stuff. It's like, you know, he says we're impoverished compared to the people of the past in terms of our social connections, community. And that sounds kind of hippie, but then there's also, you know, there's other parts of this that people might not like. For example, I don't know, if I'm in London, it's just a mess of people from all over the world. And you might say, oh, it's wonderful. You can get food from all over the world. And, you know, my wife's from another country, an immigrant myself. Like, that is wonderful in many ways. But in terms of not having coherence, it's not like, I don't know, being in Japan, where 99% of people have a similar worldview, similar values. It might be similar religion in some countries, rituals that are similar, you know, that people pass through, that everyone understands each other. A lot of that's missing. So a big question for me is, how do we create that as a digital nomad, you know, as someone who's living in a city that, you know, a country that's massively founded on people from all over the world or whatever it is. Like, there's no going back. We're not going back to 1950s Britain. I wouldn't want that. But how do we find that coherence and community and belonging that maybe our tribal ancestors had, and some people have today, but very few? You know, there's a little bit more of it in Portugal, I would say, in terms of belonging, in terms of connection, you know, sort of social co-regulation stuff again. And I think as an embodiment community, you know, how do we raise that challenge? And I think the cracks in the kind of old way are really showing. Like, in a way, when I started embodiment, it was hard to explain to people. I don't think it's just, I mean, the world has got better educated around mindfulness and stuff like that in the last 25 years, but also, you know, I've got better explaining it maybe too, but also I think the need for it is just clear. Like, people are hanging on to their sanity by their fingernails. The need for personal practices, which are great, you know, the yoga, the meditation, the breath work, all these things I do, but also community practices. And I think that is still lacking. You know, most yoga studios are not actual communities. They don't do ritual. They don't, I don't know, help homeless people. They don't have a social function. You don't get married in a yoga studio. Now, don't get someone before you type in. You know, there's an exception. Maybe your yoga studio is different, but it's generally not what's there. And I think, how do we bring in this collective social element? It's really important. In terms of sort of threats to the embodiment world, you know, Christmas message, I'd say, you know, one, wow, you know, embodiment world's doing great. And I've done, one of the highlights for me this year was Ukraine work. Another highlight's been having mentees. I have a bunch of mentees from all over the world, all do great stuff, different stages of their career. I love working with my mentees. And a lot of what I tell them is just, you're doing great. I believe in you. Keep going. They just need someone to pat them on the back, someone encouraging. And I don't think they all have like missing father figures or something that many of us do. You know, it's more just like, they just need someone to say, I believe in you. Keep going. You're doing good work. You can do this, right? We all need that. I was lucky to have had that in my life from various people. And I feel it's great to pass that on. You know, as I say, being a mentor is awesome, awesome experience. And I know we also arranged my mentor, Paul Linden, to have some more mentees this year. Patricia had the mentee program. And I said, I've been running one, a European one, a States one. I'm not selling this, by the way, it's full up for next year. And I may or may not do it again the year after. I might have a sabbatical year. Yeah, so that mentorship, and just to say, you know, if you're working in this field, if you're generally, you know, most of us doing good work, right? You're helping people get their shit together. We can't solve all the world's problems, but just to say, you know, from Uncle Mark, from Mark Claus at Christmas, you're doing great. It's all right. You know, I believe in you. Keep going. Like that is just something so many of us really, really need to hear. I've definitely had that reinforced as a mentor this year. As I said, I had my own sort of well-being crisis, my own burnout. I've really looked at like, okay, what brings me joy? What do I want to keep doing? It turns out running a company is not really my happy place. I'm an embodiment teacher, third generation teacher. I love teaching, good at teaching. That's what I do. I kind of slipped into running a company 2 years ago after the embodiment conference. You know, I took on the team for the conference. It was such a big event. And then it just made sense to keep that team going. There was also a certain amount of greed involved. And by that, I don't mean not someone any evil. It was just like, okay, we're doing work. There's a potential to really earn a good living here that I hadn't imagined actually. And I just kind of kept going with that. And that motivation kind of creeps in as sort of financial, as opposed to like, okay, what is my gift here? What should I be really doing? So I've been trying to get back to that this year. And I think, you know, relatively successfully, trying to find the balance between, you know, go to Ukraine for 2 months and come back and go, oh, how's my business? So trying to find the balance between things, but I think with Keck, that's lining up well. Yeah, you know, running, having staff and doing that, and being a manager, you know, it's a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother thing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone. The other one I say is a certain amount of being known. So, you know, that came with the conference 2 years ago. I think I've sort of taken me a couple of years to really integrate that, being recognized, and this sort of more unpleasant things like the takedown attempts and things, the cancel culture. I think people see through that now, luckily. I did actually just mail, you know, one of the people responsible for some of that stuff in the past, and just go, did you get the impact this has, right? Like personally on people, that people feel reluctant to do projects. You know, I wouldn't use the word trauma because it's overused, but certainly bruised by it, really bruised. And people who are just good people doing good stuff in the world, you know, this weird supply and demand problem where people are looking for Nazis and racists and misogynists and things everywhere, where, you know, that's not, with a few notable exceptions, sort of guru abusers who probably deserve what's coming to them. For most of us, we're just doing our thing, you know. But I think the world has kind of seen through that now. The world no longer believes that those people are the sort of activists, the sort of self-proclaimed moral saviors of the world are actually decent human beings. I think mostly we see through that now. And yeah, I think it's still a risk, the embodiment world, the sort of wokeism of it and the takedown cultures and the kind of bullying that comes with that, the kind of hypersensitivity. You know, I've seen trauma go from being unheard of to people being traumatized in inverted commas by the tiny things. And when I was going to Ukraine, actually, I messaged a bunch of the world's top trauma teachers, and some of them were very helpful. David Pacelli was very helpful. Stephen Borges did a webinar for us when I was out in Ukraine. But several of them were like, we can't help with this because we just do Western first world trauma. And I don't really know about real shit. It was basically, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what they said. And I was kind of shocked by that. I was like, wow, okay. You know, we have these trauma celebrities now, these trauma rock stars. And I've got a bit cynical about the industry of embodiment because it really is an industry. A lot of it comes down to affiliate stuff, you know, people doing affiliate stuff for each other. That's how you make real money in this industry. And you have to be kind of very good politician, bland, play it safe, in many cases cowardly. Like a major partner, a very well-known meditation teacher from the baby boomer American generation, stopped working with us because she got one complaint on an email list of 80,000 people. And I just thought, the cowardliness of that, you know? Yeah, and I think that's the danger this sort of small, slightly damaged, you know, hyper-vigilant, traumatized kind of woke minority can do, other than brainwashing a whole new generation. But the real damage they can do is if cowardly people don't stand up to them. And I think that is an issue. When the industry is built on affiliate work, it's built on marketing. There's people who are just good at marketing in this industry. People think I'm really good at marketing. That's not the truth. I'm sort of okay at it. There's some people who are slick. Charisma, I'd say, is definitely a factor. And a lot of people in the industry are just feeding people what they want to hear. I can stand up and say stuff that sounds nice and people will nod and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, your vulnerability is your leadership, or, some bullshit phrase. And you'll get well known that way. The sort of vulnerability porn is part of this, the sort of showing your vulnerability in a certain way. That's definitely going too far in the industry. But yeah, in terms of what makes people well known, it's not the best people. It's like podcasters doing each other's podcasts a lot and stuff now. It's just who can promote who. And there is a network, and most of the American boomers really own the show. Like, I kind of almost broke into that network. I met a lot of them after the conference. And then there's a bunch of them sort of closed ranks because they were like, he's not one of us. He doesn't think like us. He's not going to play by the rules. Very, very amusing to see people who pretend to be radical actually to do that. And there are good names in the field. If I mention someone's name, it's normally because I like them and respect them. And even some of our competitors are really great. Alex Howard and his organization do great work. Probably our nearest competitors, Coaches Rising. I'm friends with them. Fleet does lots of good conferences. We tend to partner with people who are robust and the real deal. And I know behind the scenes. I know personally. I've spent quite a bit of time online with Fleet and the Coaches Rising guys and those kind of people. And yeah, not just doing affiliates for the sake of affiliates. Interestingly, the tech scaling, I'd say, is another factor in terms of what will make this industry rise or fall. Also, in terms of just having an app that's techie, there's a certain scale. We might see mostly what happens on the internet is more and more of the win goes to certain people. So we see like Amazon sell like more than 90% of the books on the internet, not because they're the best company, right? It's just that they're big, and people think book, they think Amazon. You think short-term accommodation, you think Airbnb. You think taxi, you think Uber. So this kind of accumulation is called winner takes all. We might see that happening due to tech in the embodiment space. There's a few things my company's working on that may help that and democratize things a little bit more. So we'll watch the space for next year. I've been thinking about it for a few years, and some of it's starting to come towards fruition now. In terms of our year ahead next year, we will be running certificate of embodiment coaching, our kind of flagship thing, meditation teacher training, probably a toolkit later in the year, but probably a lot less courses. We feel like we just bombarded our list with sales emails, and we want to get back to actually giving some more value, just focusing on what we're really good at, rather than a million things. I really enjoyed my Embodiment Explorers group. That's kind of like fun way of doing embodiment, just in a sort of fun, light-hearted way. I think we bring that to the industry, which can take itself very seriously. That our brands become like practical plus fun, right? It's like shit that works plus dick jokes, and that's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's okay. The nice thing about how the business is now set up is like I can be pretty authentic. People that are doing a lot of affiliates and a lot of fake partnerships and that kind of thing, they can't be authentic. It's too risky for them. They've got too many people they can upset. Whereas now the business model we have, it's not bulletproof, but it's pretty robust in terms of people trying to cancel us or any of that nonsense, just because of how I've set it up over the last couple of years. I've been, hang on a minute, I want to be free to speak my mind and teach how I want to teach. So yeah, I think we're in a pretty good spot for that now. Thank you to all those of you who have supported us. I love, the live events. We must have done hundreds of thousands of people come to live events. I know we've had like over 1 million podcast downloads, several million YouTube hits. I haven't got all the stats, all the social stuff, but really just loads of people into this stuff, loads of people supporting it. And this is the positive message in the Christmas message. So there is just a wave of more and more people who are into this stuff, who see there's a problem in society, who see that we need something a bit more than Muk mindfulness and Muk yoga, and are looking at depth with stuff. Like I do see that in the embodiment world, which is fantastic. And I'm proud to be a part of that. And as I said a few times, super grateful for the team, particularly there was times this year when I was swanning around Ukraine and, various people were holding the fort. Or there was, times when I was just down and Karin or Alina would kind of help me get where I need to be to teach and put me in that spot. As I said, it's a humbling year for me, both in terms of finances, in terms of health. Really looked at myself hard in a number of ways and just gone, I feel like kind of like I don't call it a crisis, but a midlife change, transition, and kind of gone, who am I? What am I really doing? Do I want to keep doing those things? And how do I want to live my life? I think the whole world's doing that, but I certainly have personally, and a lot of the team have just been awesome. It's sometimes just little nudges like Karen saying, "Hey, do you need me to teach this evening?" Or saying, "Hey, do you realize you're teaching? I've made some notes from when I taught this morning." It's just great team. I think work is who you work with as much as what you do. I really believe that, and that for me, the students, we because of all the jokes and the silliness, and it's, yes, sometimes being a bit offensive, whatever, it kind of filters out people that don't have a sense of humor. Right? We tend to get intelligent, nice students with a sense of humor. And so thank you, big thank you. I don't take it for granted to anyone who studied with us and, got something from that. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's, I get to do my life's work, which is pretty positive. So where's the world going? I don't know. Are we going to make it through all these difficult things? I don't know. Are things going to get worse before they get better? Quite possibly. Do we have enough tools and things to make it? I don't know, but I do know that it helps. The dancing I did last night was tremendously helpful to my day today, my meditation this morning, etc. Do we do some good work? I'd say we do. So again, thank you for all your support, whether you're in the team or one of the members of the community. It is appreciated. And I'm just going to keep doing what I love, keep doing the work I love. I think we focused that in kind of a nice way. A lot of instability in my own life, but that's a constant. I feel like there may be something else emerging for me as well as embodied work, and I'm curious what that is. I'm making space for that, and but I'm also sure that I'm going to keep teaching embodiment in some form, almost certainly till the day I die. So it's just how that evolves, and I certainly love the coaches' work we do. So booked for all sorts of places next year. Maybe I'll see you in person if you've had enough online. I think it's like 15 places in the live diary in Embodiment Unlimited. And we've got a free event in Jan on resilience, which relates to a lot of the stuff I've been talking about. Do share that around as ever. That's a great way to help us out. And I guess I'll see you online or in person next year. So ho, ho, ho. There's my completely rambling, slightly cold Christmas message for this year.